Imagine finding a piece of meat covered in mold. It smells terrible, looks terrible, and probably tastes even worse. Today, most of us would throw it straight into the trash. But thousands of years ago, food was never guaranteed. A successful hunt could mean eating well for several days. A failed hunt could mean going hungry. So throwing food away was not always an easy choice. Sometimes, yesterday's food was today's only meal. And that raises a fascinating question. How could ancient humans eat questionable food and survive? Did their stomachs somehow become stronger than ours? Or is there something about rotten food we misunderstand? First, we need to understand what rotten actually means. Not every old food is automatically dangerous. Food can change because of bacteria, fungi, enzymes, air, and time. Some changes make food dangerous. Others can make food sour, fermented, dried, or preserved. Humans eventually learned to recognize these differences. Smell became one of their most useful warning systems. Color and texture could also reveal important clues. And humans were remarkably good at learning from experience. But survival wasn't just about knowing what to avoid. It was also about learning how to make food last. And that changed everything. Ancient humans had no refrigerators. But nature itself offered surprisingly effective storage methods. Cold environments could slow the growth of microorganisms. Dry environments could remove the moisture microbes needed. Fire offered another powerful advantage. Cooking could destroy many harmful microorganisms living on food. That made cooked food much safer than many raw foods. But they discovered another trick: drying. Drying removed moisture and helped food survive longer. Smoke could also help preserve certain foods. So ancient humans weren't simply eating anything that looked disgusting. They were developing an entire science of survival. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Humans eventually learned that some food could be intentionally transformed. Fermentation was one of those transformations. Microorganisms changed the food in controlled ways. The result could become sour, aromatic, and completely different. And some fermented foods could last longer than fresh ones. This is very different from simply eating rotten meat. Controlled fermentation can be useful. Uncontrolled spoilage can be dangerous. Ancient people didn't know microbiology, but they could observe patterns across generations. And those observations became practical survival knowledge. Imagine having no expiration dates. No packaging telling you when something became unsafe. No thermometer telling you whether meat was warm enough. Their senses became their first line of defense. They could smell unusual changes. They could notice strange colors. They could feel slimy or unusual textures. And they could remember what happened the last time. That memory could literally save a life. But instincts weren't perfect. Some dangerous contamination can be impossible to see or smell. And that's where cooking became incredibly important. Fire gave ancient humans something incredibly valuable: control. They could heat food instead of simply eating it raw. Heat could kill many harmful microorganisms. It also made some foods easier to digest. And cooking opened up more possibilities for survival. Food that once seemed too tough could become edible. Food that spoiled quickly could sometimes be preserved first. So survival wasn't about having an invincible stomach. It was about reducing danger whenever possible. They used fire, sunlight, cold, smoke, and time. Every method gave them another chance to survive. But there was still one enormous problem. Sometimes, all their careful planning could still fail. A storm could destroy their supplies. A long winter could stretch their food dangerously thin. And a failed hunt could leave everyone hungry. That was when yesterday's leftovers became extremely tempting. But desperation didn't make every rotten meal safe. Some foods could contain dangerous toxins. And some risks could remain even after cooking. So the idea that ancient humans simply ate rotten food is misleading. They weren't immune to food poisoning. They faced the same basic biological dangers we do. They simply developed clever ways to lower those risks. So, did ancient humans really eat rotten food and survive? Sometimes they probably ate food that we would reject today. But old did not always mean dangerously rotten. Humans learned to recognize useful changes from dangerous ones. They cooked food over fire. They dried meat under the sun. They used smoke, cold, and other natural methods. They passed their knowledge from one generation to another, and that knowledge became one of humanity's greatest survival tools. Their secret wasn't a superhuman stomach. Their secret was observation, adaptation, and knowing when to say no. Because surviving the ancient world wasn't about eating everything. It was about learning what could keep you alive. And that lesson still follows us today. Sometimes, the difference between survival and disaster is simply knowing what not to eat.